Welcome back to Master 79. In this lesson we are working through ielts speaking part 2 and part 3, topic 35. Describe a person you met at a party who you enjoyed talking with. We will brainstorm it, plan it, hear a full model long turn, and then take all 6 part 3 questions. One important note before we start. When we say band 9, that reflects our own quality checking against the public ielts band descriptors. It is not a score awarded by a certified examiner. The candidate, and her story are invented for teaching. Please copy the technique, not the content. Here is the cue card exactly as it is printed. You should say what party it was, how you met this person, and what you talked about, and explain why you enjoyed talking with him or her. We reproduce the wording verbatim, so where the source has a small grammatical quirk we flag it rather than quietly fixing it. A quick reminder of how part 2 runs. The examiner gives you the card, then 1 minute to prepare with paper and a pencil. You then speak for between 1 and 2 minutes. The examiner will stop you at 2 minutes, so aim to still be talking when that happens. Part 3 follows immediately and lasts around 4 to 5 minutes. Here is the 1 minute of preparation written out. Notice that the left column is only ideas and the right column is only language. Keep them separate. If you try to write full sentences in 60 seconds, you will run out of time and end up reading aloud, which always sounds flat. Now the shape of the answer. The fourth bullet, the explain bullet, carries the most marks, so it gets the most time. A very common mistake is spending 50 seconds describing the party and then rushing the reason you enjoyed the conversation. Here is the first part of the long turn. Listen for how quickly she gets to a specific person and how the story of meeting is told as a small scene rather than summarized.
I'd like to talk about a woman called Han who I met at a housewarming party about 6 months ago. A colleague of mine had just moved into a new flat and she invited around 20 of us over for the evening. Nothing formal, just food, music, and a lot of chatting. To be honest, I didn't know many people there, so I ended up gravitating towards the kitchen, which is where I bumped into Han.
We both reached for the same bottle of sparkling water at exactly the same moment, and that little bit of awkwardness broke the ice straight away.
She laughed, introduced herself, and it turned out she was the landlady's daughter. She'd only dropped into hand over some spare keys and had been talked into staying.
The middle section, one topic explored properly rather than 3 topics mentioned in passing.
We ended up talking for the best part of 2 hours. We started off with the usual small talk, how we each knew the host, what we did for a living, but the conversation quickly moved on to something far more interesting. She's a documentary photographer and she'd just come back from a 3-month project photographing families who make a living from the river. She showed me a few of the shots on her phone and talked me through the stories behind them, and I was completely absorbed.
And the final section, answering the explain bullet with a closing line that looks forward instead of stopping dead.
The reason I enjoyed it so much is that she was a brilliant listener as well as a brilliant talker. She never dominated the conversation. She'd tell a story and then immediately turn it back on me and ask what I thought. and she had a real knack for asking questions that made you think, not what do you do, but what would you do if you had a year off? By the end of the night, I felt as though I'd known her for years, and we stayed in touch ever since.
Here is the complete long turn on one slide, so you can pause the video and read it through. The word count and the spoken length are shown at the bottom. Now the language that is actually doing the work. These are the features an examiner is listening for under lexical resource and grammatical range, and none of them are rare words. They are ordinary words used precisely. On to part 3, 6 questions, all taken from the same source card. These are discussion questions, so the examiner wants opinions with reasons, not personal stories. Question 1. On what occasions would people be willing to get to know new people?
I'd say people are most open to it when there's already a shared reason to be in the room: weddings, work conferences, hobby groups, that sort of thing. The common thread is that you have something in common before you even speak, which removes the awkwardness of having to invent a topic. People are also far more willing, when they are slightly outside their comfort zone, like traveling alone or starting a new job, because they genuinely need new connections. At an ordinary gathering full of old friends, most people just stay with who they already know.
Question 2. Where would people get to know new people?
Traditionally, it would have been universities, workplaces, and neighbourhood events, and those are still the main ones. But I think the map has shifted quite a bit over the last decade. A lot of it now happens through interest-based communities, running clubs, climbing gyms, co-working spaces, and of course online through social media and gaming. What's interesting is how much those online connections spill over into real life. People meet in a group chat and then arrange to meet up in person, which would have seemed very strange to my parents' generation.
Question 3. How do people start a conversation?
Usually with something low risk and shared, or whether the venue, the food, or a comment about whatever is happening in the room. It sounds trivial, but small talk does a real job. It's a way of testing whether the other person actually wants to engage before you invest in a deeper topics. Beyond that, the openers that work best tend to be genuine questions rather than statements, because a question hands the other person something to do. A compliment works too, as long as it doesn't come across as insincere.
Question 4. Is it difficult for Vietnamese people to communicate with people from other countries?
There are certainly some hurdles, though I'd say they're shrinking fast. The obvious one is language. English is taught heavily in schools now, but a lot of learners are much stronger at reading than at speaking, so they hesitate. There's a cultural element as well. Vietnamese communication tends to be fairly indirect and quite hierarchical, so being blunt or openly disagreeing can feel uncomfortable, and that sometimes gets misread as a lack of confidence. That said, younger people who have grown up with international media are far more at ease with it, and in the big cities you'd struggle to notice much of a gap at all.
Question 5. Why are some people unwilling to have conversations with others?
A few reasons come to mind. For some, it's simply personality. Introverts find sustained social interaction draining rather than energizing, so they ration it. For others, it's anxiety. They're worried about saying the wrong thing or being judged, so staying quiet feels safer. And then there's a practical factor, which is that people are busier and far more distracted than they used to be. If you're looking at your phone, you're effectively signaling that you're unavailable, and I think that has made casual conversation between strangers noticeably rarer.
Question 6. Is it difficult for adults to talk with children?
It can be, and I'd argue the difficulty is usually on the adult side rather than the child's. A lot of adults fall into a sort of interview mode. How's school? What's your favourite subject? Which children find boring, so they close down. The adults who are good at it tend to meet children on their own ground. They'll join in with whatever the child is already doing, or ask a slightly silly, imaginative question instead of a factual one. So it's less about talking down to children and more about being willing to take their world seriously.
Before we finish, the 5 habits that hold a part 3 answer together. If you only take one, take the first. Answer in your first sentence, then justify. That is topic 35. Try recording your own long turn using the same plan, then compare it with the model. If this helped, subscribe to Bmaster79 for the rest of the speaking series. See you in the next one.